Yo, what's going on, guys? Today I want to bring you a guide for my Toxic Rain build that I have been using to farm Simulacrums. When it comes to Toxic Rain, it's not really the best build for Simulacrums. There are definitely better ones to do that, but the reason why I am doing Simulacrums with Toxic Rain is because it can level up around 25 gems, as you can see here. And I don't believe there's any other build that can do that right now, and that's simply because it is a bow build, so it can use Maloney, and on top of that it just doesn't require any gems. The only things I need is my 6-link, my aura setup, and few mobility / defensive gems. So as you can see here, I have 3 gems, 4, 1 on each onset, 1 additional here, and 9 in weapon swap. On top of that, you can still level up Awakened Void Manipulation and Vicious Projectile and just constantly swap them out for level 1 if you want to do that. Also, some of the auras and utility gems are not really needed, so technically you can even increase the amount of gems that you are leveling. So with this current version, I can reach wave 30, but it is very expensive. I actually never believed I will be able to reach wave 30 on this build, but because we got some nice new items in the past few leagues, like Mage Blood, like Eldritch items, and this league we also got Recombining, which helps with crafting gear a lot. For example, I crafted a ring like that. So now it is actually obtainable to reach wave 30. But in this video I want to show you all of the cheaper versions, so how can you start farming Simulacrums, because even if you're gonna do wave 15, and that's actually something I tested, if you're gonna reach wave 15 and you're gonna level up not even this amount of gems, just like 15 to 20, you're still gonna make actually pretty good profit with 15 waves. Eventually move on to 18, 20, and eventually 30. So there are like few ways you are actually progressing this build. So first way is you just progress your how far can you reach in the waves, so just your build power. The second way you are progressing this build is how many gems you can level up. So for example, I'm using Onset Rings, which you don't have to start with. You can use some gems with resist. You don't have to use Maloney. Obviously, a good bow with some life and damage over time multi is gonna give you a lot, so you don't have to start with something like that. So that's the second way you're gonna progress, just being able to level up more gems. And the third way you are progressing the build is not really actually the build, it's just an amount of free currency you have to be able to spend on the gems, because you would just start with leveling normal gems, level them up to 20, flip them with Gem Cutter, level them up to 20 again, then corrupt them, and you would just check PoE Ninja which ones are the best to level up. And then eventually you can move on to Empowers and Enlightens if you have enough currency, and then eventually to Awakened Gems. Because Awakened Gems most of the time will give you the best profit. You can also do alternate quality gems, but I found them to be a bit annoying to buy, to sell, and so on, so I don't really like level up these gems, but I still did level up a few of them. So yeah, these are the ways you are progressing a build. So now first let me show you the cheap version of the build. So how would you start doing it? So this is the version that I was using to farm my Mage Blood, so that's before I got all of the gear that I have here. So with this version I was able to do around 20 waves. So first let's talk about defense, because that's the most common question I'm being asked when people ask me about this build. Just how do you survive? And that's the reason why I am playing Pathfinder, because with Pathfinder you can choose your defenses thanks to Master Surgeon, because what it gives you is recover 6% of life when you use a flask. So what you are gonna do is you're gonna use 3, I believe, flasks, or maybe even 4, that have this craft used when charges reach full, with increased effect or with reduced charge used as a prefix. So what's gonna happen is whenever you're gonna reach full charges, it's just gonna constantly being used. And when you're gonna kill monsters, you're gonna just get more charges, and it's just gonna be constantly spammed all of the 4 flasks, and every time they are being used, you're gonna recover 6% life. So your life is just gonna jump around like that. It is actually crazy good defensive mechanic. It doesn't really reduce the amount of damage you take, but it just gives you insane recovery. So that's one of the main reasons why I am playing Pathfinder when I play a budget version of this build. The second main reason is just the amount of flask effectiveness, flask charges, and so on you gain thanks to being a Pathfinder, and that's because of your mana flask. And that's actually the second question that I'm being asked, and that's how do you sustain your mana. And then people send me their PoBs, and the first thing I check is, are they Pathfinder? And 90% of the time they are Raiders. And that's basically how you fix your mana sustain issues. You just go to Pathfinder, you're gonna have pretty much infinite mana flask, and also your mana flask is gonna recover much more mana to you. Okay, so these are basically the reason why I'm playing Pathfinder. Now let's move on to the key part of this build, which is the Xerthis Heart. So the way Xerthis Heart works is when you're gonna use any Val skill, and I am using Val Grace, it's gonna trigger Soul Eater. And Soul Eater is basically a buff that when you are killing something during this buff, you're gonna gain, I believe, 5% attack speed. And Toxic Rain gains a lot of damage from just being able to attack super fast. And this is also why we need a good mana flask to be able to sustain all of that mana. So it lasts 20 seconds, and wave usually lasts around 30 seconds. So this is the key part of your gameplay, basically timing the usage of Val Grace correctly to be able to kill bosses during this window. So now let me actually show you the example of wave 30, and look at the moment I am using Val Grace, which is here. So I'm waiting here, I am not using it yet. I now reached like 1-2 rows of the rewards. I'm waiting for around 3, and now I used it. So basically around, I believe 10 seconds passed, and now you can see here I have like 50 stacks, and it just keeps going up, and now bosses spawned, and I'm just gonna nuke them down. Here you can see I am almost immortal, but that's with a more expensive version of the build. And now look how fast I am attacking. Now the Soul Eater dropped off. I got again like 50 stacks, which is still decent, but now it dropped off completely. So here is actually Inspire Learning is being pretty annoying because it teleports me back to the enemies. But yeah, at the beginning of the wave, I'm attacking very slowly, and eventually with Soul Eater stacks, I attack so fast that very often my character just starts T-posing. Everything around me also starts T-posing. Well, you can see here clearly how fast my attack speed is. And I believe the maximum attack speed I reached one time was 35 attacks per second. So it is pretty crazy. Okay, so again, that's the big part of the build, and you use it as a budget version, expensive version, just always use this amulet. And it is pretty cheap, it's like 10-15 chaos, so it is a pretty good one. And the only bad thing about it is that it says items and gems have 50% increased attribute requirements. So to counter it, I am using Elegant Hubris, and it has to have a mod to commemorate Caspiro. If it doesn't have this mod, it's gonna give you a different keystone. It needs to have this mod, so you can divine it, or you can just buy one with the Caspiro. And what it's gonna do, it is gonna change the elemental equilibrium into the Supreme Ostentation, which says Igron or attribute requirements. It's also gonna give you gain no bonuses from attributes, so dexterity is not gonna give you evasion, but we are gonna use a Mage Blade anyway, which gives you spell suppression instead of dexterity, and it also gives you no bonuses from evasion, which basically means the same thing. So this negative thing is pretty much removed because you're gonna gain spell suppression instead of the evasion anyway, so it actually works pretty well together. but obviously you are using one jewel slot and some passive points. And here you can roll basically the number, the seed, for just something nice. Like, it doesn't really matter. It can be percentage life, attack speed, some resistances, chaos resistance are pretty nice. Just try to roll for a very good seed, which is the number, which you can see here, 117880. Don't absolutely aim for the same one I have, because that's also what people very often ask me. Just should I aim for the exactly same one? No, it doesn't really matter. Just try to get something that is helpful. Even if it's bad, it doesn't really matter too much. Okay, so again, Zerfi plus this, very nice combo. Okay, now to the other parts of the build, I highly suggest using double cluster jewel setup. It's gonna reduce your defenses, because if you're not gonna use the second one, you could get some more life here, here, and so on. But most of the time I found that actually getting second cluster jewel is gonna be even better defensive, because you're gonna deal more damage, so you're gonna kill monsters fast, so you're just gonna have easier time surviving. So the jewels I'm going for are the large ones with 8 passives, 12% chaos damage, with Unholy Grace, Wicked Paw, and Unwaveringly Evil. The most important one is Wicked Paw, second one is Unholy Grace, and third one Unwaveringly Evil. So also the good one is with the one that I am using here, which is a more expensive one. This is why I'm not suggesting it for the cheap version. Unspeakable Gifts, which gives you the explode mode. It's not that crazy, but it's still pretty helpful. So you can go for one like that. On medium ones, you go for 4 or 5 passives with chaos damage over time, with Student of Decay, Wicked Paw. You can also go for Flow of Life Wicked Paw, but Flow of Life Wicked Paw go for around 10 exalts, so they are very expensive. But one like that with Student of Decay and Wicked Paw, which is gonna give you some chaos resist, go for, I believe, like 50C, so they are not that crazy expensive. So you can use 3 of them, and as a fourth one I would use one with Wicked Paw and Eternal Suffering, because we don't have any way to apply Wither on this build, because we're not gonna use Ballista, because that's a waste of sockets. So thanks to that, you're gonna apply 6 Wither just by attacking, because it says 5 or fewer. So when you're gonna have 5, you can still apply 1, I believe. So you're gonna have 6 stacks of Wither on your enemy, which increases the damage greatly. Also, because we are only applying 6 Withered stacks, the corruption is not that great. It is very nice if you apply 15, but if you apply 6, it's not that great. So instead, I am anointing Potency of Will. Okay, so here you can see everything else on the tree. In terms of the jewels, you just want to go for Chaos Damage over time multi, Damage over time multi, Life, Attack Speed, and Attack Speed with both. These are basically the mods you want to go for. So for example, here you can see I have just Life and Chaos Damage without multi. Here the same thing. Here I actually have triple one with Chaos Damage over time multi, Attack Speed, and Life. So that's basically the combinations you want to go for. Here you can see damage over time multi, attack speed, and life, and so on. So these are basically the gems you want to go for. In terms of spell suppression, you just want to have cap. That's also the question that people ask me, like, should I get spell suppression on my helmet, on my should I use a flask for spell suppression? And it doesn't matter, just get 100%. Doesn't matter where you get it. Do you get it on boots? Do you get it on the tree? I believe here I have 22% on helmets. I'm also using quartz flask, which again, being Pathfinder and enchant used to when charges reach full, is very nice. I guess I can talk about other flasks right now. So I am using again mana flask with enduring. The immunity shock doesn't matter. You can't really get anything else that is good in here. Quartz flask with increased effect and reduced effect of curses, which is pretty much gonna give you immunity to curses as long as you're gonna use the Pantheon. Which one is it? Fuck, okay. I can't see. I believe it's this one. Yes, 30% reduced effect of curses. plus 55% here. Also, you're gonna have some flask effectiveness as a Pathfinder, so it's gonna be basically 100%. Here, some additional evasion, dying sun for additional projectiles. Actually, increasing projectile is very nice because you don't only care about single target, you also care about coverage, so you want more projectiles to be able to hit more monsters. And forbidden taste is also very nice because when you get the enchant used when you take savage hit, which it basically means if you get a hit that takes more than 15% of your life, this flask is just gonna be used instantly and it's just gonna recover your life. So it's kind of like these things are just gonna constantly recover 6% life thanks to Ascendancy, and this is just gonna be a big lifesaver. But to use it, you need to have 75% chaos resist. And when you're doing simulacrums, you always want to have 75% chaos resist anyway, because chaos damage is pretty bad in simulacrums, so it's not that big of a deal. But you're gonna lose some life per second. So if you don't want to use that, you can use just normal life flask, or you can use life flask instead of dying sun, but this setup worked the best for me. So we talked about the tree. Now let me show you the weapon. So this is basically the best weapon you want to go for, and you can self-craft it 100% deterministically. So let me show you how can you do it in Craft of Exile. So basically you want to go for any bow that is 1.5 attack speed per second. So it's either grove bow, short bow, or thicket bow. And you want it to be at least item level 78. And what you do, you start with just rolling with alterations until you hit either damage over time multi tier 1 or attack speed. Or mine, I have attack speed. But because Xerxes Heart gives you so much attack speed, it actually might be better to go for damage over time multi. Technically attack speed I believe is more damage, but I think in combination with Xerxes, maybe going for damage over time multi would be better. But it doesn't matter too much, it's very small difference. So let me just cheat here, and let's say you got the tier 1 attack speed, and by the way, in game tier 1 actually shows as a tier 2. So let me show you here. You can see it says it's tier 2, which is 19%, and here you can see 19% is tier 1. So it's just bug in game, it just always shows it as a tier 2. And when you're gonna get that, you can either save it with a imprint, or you can just go and regal and annul, and you have 50-50. So then you're gonna have to recraft it until you finally have something like this. Then you're gonna craft can have up to 3 crafted modifiers, cannot roll attack modifiers, and then you're just gonna use 1 exalt, and it's guaranteed to hit 1 level of socketed gems. Then you're gonna use Hunter Exalt, which is the only RNG part of crafting, but doesn't matter which tier you hit, you are always gonna hit that chaos damage over time. And even if you're gonna hit like a tier 4, it's still 69%, and compare it to like tier 2, it's 89, so it's only like 20% difference. Tier 1 I believe is like 95 or something, so it doesn't matter too much. Just hit Hunter Orb, and whatever you get, you're gonna get. And on mine bow I have actually tier 4, so I got pretty unlucky with mine. After that, you're gonna remove crafted modifiers, and then you're gonna can have 3 crafted modifiers again. Then you're gonna craft where is it? Chaos damage over time multi, and as a prefix you're gonna craft the level of socketed support gems, which is Katarina craft. So that's basically a bow, and it's gonna cost you around 10 exalts, because this is 3 exalts and you have to do it twice, so that's 4. Hunter Orb is around 1x, base is probably gonna be around 1x. This is, you just have to use 1 exalt, plus 2 I believe is also 2 exalts, so it's gonna be around 10 exalts to craft this bow. And you can probably craft better one, maybe with your combinators, but that's basically a bow that I'm using. Now let's go back to the PoB. In terms of quiver, you just want, this is actually a pretty bad one to be honest, but you just want some attack speed, chaos damage over time multi, maybe +1 to arrow. Eventually you're gonna swap to Maloney. This is actually the reason why I didn't upgrade my bow, because I knew eventually I'm gonna just swap to Maloney. But if you have just issues with damage or surviving, just don't use Maloney. Use Maloney once you reach a good point of your build where you feel comfortable with doing at least 20 waves. For the helmet, you want to use just a normal evasion helmet with preferably enchant +1 toxic rain arrows, one like this, but you don't really need it. As you can see here, I was doing 20 waves without it. You can also use Eldritch crafting currency to get Searing Exarch, reduced mana cost of attacks, which is pretty nice mod actually, to reduce the mana cost of your toxic rain. As a chest, you use just Carcass Jack. Oh, and again, by the way, here you just go for life, evasion, spell suppression, and resists. And spell suppression, again, doesn't matter where you get it, you just want to get 100%. For gloves, you actually want to use Hunter gloves with chaos damage over time multi. Tier 1, I believe, is 20%. And everything else, just life, resists. Boots, you need to have Onslaught on kill, because that's basically the only way to get Onslaught on Pathfinder, unless you're gonna use Silver Flask, which is a waste of a flask. And everything else, again, just life and resist. Zerfisar, again, very important piece of gear. And for the rings, you want to have essence crafted rings with damage over time multi. So you craft it with essence of Delirium, which I should have somewhere here. So as you can see here, when you use it on ring, 12 to 15% damage over time multi, and that's the only way you can get this mod on the rings. So you craft it with that essence. This is actually the reason why I'm using Fracture Ring here with life, to basically have guaranteed life. And then on top of that, you just use one essence, you get damage over time multi, and whatever you get, you just get. You can keep some resistances, and what you also want to keep is one free prefix, because you need to craft non-channeling skills have -7 to mana cost on both of your rings, which is gonna reduce the mana cost by a lot. And again, with Zerfis Heart, you're gonna attack so fast, you just need to have some mana reduction on your gear. So yeah, this is why I'm using these rings. You can also use one jewel, which I don't know if I'm using here. I am Replica Conqueror Efficiency, which is also -9 to mana cost. So if you have issues with mana sustain, go for this. Go for some Flask effectiveness maybe on your tree. Go for these crafts, and Eldritch mod, Searing Exarch, reduce mana cost of attacks on the helmet. And second ring, I also have Curse Enemies with Despair. But as you can see here, I don't have damage over time multi. So perfect one would be with both of them, but that's a bit higher budget. And as a belt, you're just gonna use Stygian Vice with some life resist. For Abyssal Jewel, I use one with high life and blind enemies with attack. Doesn't really matter, just high life. You can get some resistances here if you need them. Maybe phasing, but you're gonna get phasing for quartz anyway. And yeah, that's basically it in terms of gear for the cheaper version. So again, this is the Pathfinder version, and with this version I would just farm 20 waves Simulacrum until I can afford Mage Blood, because Mage Blood allows you to swap to Raider. And now I guess let me show you the Raider version, which I can show you in game because that's what I'm playing. And the main reason you need to have Mage Blood to swap to Raider is because that's gonna allow you to not use Mana Flask anymore. Because with Mage Blood you're gonna use this craft on a flask, 24 up to 25% reduce mana cost of skills. And thanks to the increased effect, it's basically 50%. Plus this helmet, it's 75%, plus crafts on the rings, it's gonna reduce your mana cost to 0. So as you can see, I have 12 mana, and my Toxic Rain does not cost any mana at all. So you're no longer gonna need the Pathfinder Ascendancy for basically your Mana Flask sustain. So yeah, that's why you need Mage Blood. And also you want to craft enchant on it with enemies withered by you have -6 to all resistances, which is actually big thing, because chaos resistances are very hard to penetrate, especially on a damage over time builds. And this thing actually doesn't work because the penetration only works for hits, and we are dealing damage over time, so it has to say enemies have minus resistances, which you can only get on the belt enchant. You can get it also on a helmet, hunter helmet I believe, but we are gonna use Eldritch, so you can't do it. And there's also one here, which is enemies poisoned by you have -5 to chaos resistances, which is why I am using this one passive for chance to poison. But I'm gonna talk about this a little bit later. Okay, again, Mage Blood allows you to swap to Raider because you no longer need Mana Flask. And if you remember, the second reason why we were going for Pathfinder is Master Surgeon for very nice life sustain. So if you're gonna be playing with Mage Blood, you're gonna use Granite Flask. You're gonna have a lot of armor, a lot of evasion thanks to the... Actually, I forgot to talk about the auras on Pathfinder, but I guess I can quickly mention it. You're gonna just use Malevolence, Valgrace to proc the Soul Eater, but also you're gonna use normal Grace, Flame Dash, Steel Skin, Blink Arrow, Toxic Rain. You can see all of the links. Before you have your Empower, you can use Concentrated Effect, I believe. And yeah, that's basically it. So for your auras, you're just gonna use Grace and Malevolence. When you're gonna have enough reservation, you're gonna be able to use also Determination, Grace, Defiance Banner, and Malevolence. So in terms of reservation, I have some on my helmet. I have some over here. Also Enlighten level 4 is a very big part of this. Obviously you can use more auras as a Pathfinder, but I just assume that before you get Mage Blood, you're not gonna be able to afford your Enlighten. Maybe you can buy it earlier. Obviously, if you can buy it earlier, you can swap to Defiance Banner and Determination, even as a Pathfinder. But yeah, basically to fix your defensive issues, because we are no longer Pathfinder, you're gonna go for armor, you're gonna go for Determination, Defiance Banner. Here, some mana reservation efficiency. You can also get some here. Grace has reduced. You can get some here, which I actually don't need. And I have some on a helmet, as you can see. So yeah, these are basically auras. So with that I have 45k armor and 35k evasion. But big part why I have so much is because I also am using Grasping Mail with 100% increased global defenses and increased effect of auras, and Malevolence has increased aura effect. You can also go for Determination, has increased aura effect. It is up to you. I just wanted more damage. But yeah, this was actually a very big craft. It did cost me a little bit less than 100 exalts to get this chest, but it is one of the biggest upgrades you can get after getting Mage Blood. When you get Mage Blood, you probably are gonna still use the Carcass Jack at the start, and you still will use all of these auras, and you're also gonna have like 25k armor and 25k evasion, so it's not that big of a deal to still use Carcass Jack. So yeah, thanks to all of the auras, Granite Flask, effectiveness of Flask, and so on, you're gonna have a lot of defenses against attacks, but you're still gonna die to spells and elemental damage because you're only gonna have spell suppression for it. This is why you're gonna want to use these flasks, so Sapphire, Topaz, and Ruby, for 40% less lightning, cold, and fire damage taken because of the effectiveness of flasks. So this is how you're gonna negate the elemental damage. You can also see all of my other crafts on the flasks, so armor, attack speed, again mana cost here, and effect of curses. You're no longer gonna need the Pantheon for the effect of curses, so you can get Tukohama for just some physical damage reduction and recovery. So yeah, this is how I'm fixing my defense issues as a raider, but you're still gonna have recovery issues. So to fix your recovery, you're gonna take Blood Drinker for 2% life on kill, and you also want to use Watcher Eye with damage over time multi while affected by Malevolence and life on hit while affected by Vitality. This is gonna be enough to just sustain your life by a long shot. It's just so much life on hit, so much life on kill. You can also use this focus, which gives you 1% of evasion regenerates life when you use it, which is not that great to be honest, but it's just nice to have. You don't have to go for it. Because I have it, I also went for the craft on the helmet, 12% physical damage reduction while you're focused, but that's also absolutely not necessary. So yeah, this is how I'm basically surviving. So yeah, because of that I'm also using Vitality, just level 1, because I don't have enough mana for higher levels. If I went for some additional mana reservation, I could probably get even more, but I do feel like just life on hit and life on kill is enough to sustain my life. So yeah, this is how we are surviving on this version of the build. You no longer need Onslaught on a boots, so you can go for boots like this with chance to avoid elemental ailments. You can get implicit chance to avoid elemental ailments also. This is the Eater of Words, and some action speed modifier, Seeing Exarch. I actually made a mistake and I went for the Greater. The grant is 5%, so I should have went for the grant, but probably gonna recraft it later. And as a starter version with Mage Blood, you also probably are gonna need this for 50% chance to avoid elemental elements who are phasing, and 40% phasing here. Plus 60% from the boots, that's gonna be 100% chance to avoid elemental elements, which is actually a big deal. Also here, not only you're getting 40% spell suppression, but also phasing, and we are not using quartz flasks, so phasing is actually a very big thing for simulacrums. Very often you die when you just get stuck and you can't move, so phasing is actually a big deal. You can swap from this to this once you get this chest, because this chest also gives you 30% chance to avoid elemental ailments. So combine boots and chest is 100% chance to avoid elemental ailments, so you can go for frenzy charges. But I actually am thinking about swapping back to this, because you're not gonna need as much spell suppression on your other items, and to be honest, this point is not that big. And because I don't have phasing here, I am using one jewel like that with Corrupting Blood immunity. Hinder is also actually pretty big, because you often get Hinder in simulacrums, and this also gives me chance to gain phasing on kill. This was actually a very lucky jewel that I was able to buy, but yeah, it is a pretty good one. You're still gonna go for Eternal Suffering, Wicked Pole, you can go for Unspeakable Gifts, and eventually if you're gonna have enough Chaos Resistances, you can start dropping Student of Decay and go for Flow of Life. So I'm using actually 1, 2, and I could be using third one, because I actually don't need the 13% Chaos Res, but it's just I'm waiting for a good one with some nice suffix to pop up on the trade, and I still haven't bought one. For the other jewels, you're gonna use Watcher Eye, again with Malevolence and Vitality. Second one is Forbidden Flame and Forbidden Flesh with Gathering Winds. This is basically 20% action speed modifier, which is big for your damage and for survivability. Next one is actually Inspire Learning. This was suggested to me by someone. Inspire Learning and all of the Headhunter buffs don't give that much damage for Toxic Rain, but it is mostly just for defense purposes. And when I actually was doing, I believe, around 27, 25 simulacrum waves, I was dying like 3 to 5 times per simulacrum. And when I equipped this, I started dying maybe like once per simulacrum. It was actually a big difference. It is mostly just for defense. It is gonna be a bit annoying because you're gonna get the echoes and stuff, so you're gonna start teleporting everywhere and so on, but it was definitely worth it. And the last jewel is the Impossible Escape with passives in radius of chaos inoculation can be allocated, which lets me allocate these points. Eventually, if I would get a curse on hit on the gloves, I would also allocate Whispers of Doom, which is pretty nice. And again, you can here get some mana reservation if you feel like needed, but increased effect of non-curse auras are very big, especially if you don't have the chest, but combined with the chest, you get a lot of aura effectiveness. Okay, so I think that's basically it. I just upgraded all of my other items. As you can see here, I am using the Double Fractured Ring with life, curse, dot multi, chaos resist, and -8 mana cost with quality. Here, life, dot multi, and minus mana cost, helmet, mana reservation efficiency, mana cost of attacks, life, resist. I actually wanted to craft this with spell suppression, but I got lucky with other mods and I just kept it. It's basically tier 1 life and tier 3 hybrid life with big resistances. And that's basically it. In terms of the like future upgrades I would go for, I would definitely upgrade my gloves. I would try to get the cooling strike. On helmets you can get +2 auras and maybe you could swap your auras to your helmet. I would also like to go for Enlighten level 5, then maybe I would be able to fit the Vitality in here as a 6th link and go for Vitality level 20, 21, or maybe even fit some kind of other aura. I don't know what I would go for, but also you have to remember, more auras you're gonna use, less gems you're gonna be able to level up. And yeah, that's basically it. I would just go for the same items with just more life, more defense, more resists, and that's basically it. And again, as you could see in the clip I showed you, right now with this I can reach like 30 waves, and when I just got Mage Blood and I still didn't have my chest and a lot of other stuff, I was able to reach like wave 27, which was still very, very profitable. So yeah, that's it in terms of this video. I hope you learned a lot about this build and see you next time.